Let's go to the Word of God. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 through verse 11. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are present. The same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him be glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen. I'd like to preach tonight from the subject, what's next? Please take your seat. Tonight, I'm sure I will not exhaust our entire message tonight, but I'm going to ask the Lord to give me the grace and the strength to go as long as I can. No believer will leave this year without having experienced the sound and the breath of the roaring lion, the devil. His tactics has been intimidation and isolation in this past year. These two assaults are greatly anchored in the spirit of fear. The spirit of fear's intent is to restrict and ultimately seize your movement. Faith causes movement, but fear ceases movement. Be sober, be vigilant is the cry from Peter. In other words, self-control and watchfulness is what was needed in order to resist and to stand. Resist the notion that nobody is dealing with what I am dealing with, but stand in faith, knowing we have a high priest who is touched and in touch with the feelings of our infirmity and our trouble. We must resist the fact of shame-based living because of what has happened, but stand in faith knowing that there is now no condemnation to them who walk after spiritual things and not carnal or evil. We must resist the fact that it's too late for better, but stand in faith knowing that there is another stop, and that other stop is called bigger, brighter, and better. Let me free about a dozen of you in here tonight to tell you, you are not alone. I'm going to say that again. You are not alone. Isolation will cause us to think that no one has been where you are. Verse 9 says, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by the brotherhood in the world. In other words, somebody is going through or has gone through and just came out what you going in. You are not alone. You're not the first person to encounter what you are encountering. Somebody else just came out of what you're going in. Romans 8:18 says to us, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared, yes, Lord, to the glory that shall be revealed in us. That word reckon, bless me, because what reckon says compute or count. In other words, what is happening to you or what has happened to you does not compare to what's going to happen for you. Somebody ought to shout right there. The enemy will have you to think that you are on your last round out. But can I preach to somebody tonight for a few moments to tell you every round that you're counted out is a round that you're really called to another place in God. Though my beginning was small, my ending was great. You are not alone. Preach down your row and tell your neighbor, you're not in it by yourself. Somebody else had a breakup in their marriage. Somebody else's child is acting funny. Somebody else is dealing with mental issues in their family. You are not alone. You weren't the only one that had financial issues. You weren't the only one that had physical issues. You were not the only one that had some spiritual trauma. You are not alone. But if God be for us, additionally, let me suggest to you that your sufferings or your challenge or your setback or your interruptions or your conditions or your situations or your disturbance, whatever you call it, has a limited time. Woo, I'm about to get happy right here by myself. It's in the Bible. Verse 10 says, after you've suffered a while. Look at your neighbor and say, I've got a limited time. Woo. The Bible says there is a time and a season for all things. It has a limited time. James 1 and 2 says, my brothers and sisters, count it all joy when you fall in various trials, knowing that the testings of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you might be perfect or mature and complete. Good God from Zion, lacking nothing. You needed this suffering to complete you. Y'all don't want to talk to me in here. Somebody told you you were going to shout your way into your blessing. No. You're going to suffer your way through it. You don't want to hear what I'm trying to say, because if it's not worth fighting for, it's not worth having. And if you think the enemy of your soul is going to let you have a pass because you're just beautiful, you've missed the boat already. But the Bible said that the suffering is causing me to become complete, which says there were some areas in our lives that were uneasy and that were uneven. God had to bring us to a place of maturity in those areas. So sufferings cause some things to smooth out. Let me hurry up. I got 11 minutes here. You thought you were going to love your way into loveliness. But you discovered you had to love them who hated you. You don't want to hear what I'm trying to say. He says sufferings, that's done with patience, brings us to a place of completion. And the place of completion in maturity helps to help us to lack nothing. I don't mean to turn a corner in this message, but too many of us are immature and incomplete because we won't last through nothing. You keep asking God to make me, and when he does, you move. You don't hear what I'm trying to say. You don't hear what I'm trying to say. Oh, my dears, and so you don't become better because things are well with you. You learn how to become better because things are not well. You learn how to adjust. Life is not about pleasing you. Life is about learning how to do the wrong thing even in the wrong places. How to do the right thing even in the wrong places. So he says patience must have its work that it might complete the work in me that needs to be done. Aren't you glad there were some prayers God didn't answer because we weren't complete enough to handle it? Well, y'all don't want to hear what I'm trying to say. I know you thought you could just quote all of your scriptures and do your holy jig and you was going to get it, but there was some internal stuff that had to be dealt with, that if God had answered all of your prayers, you'd have made a wreck out of your life. But God loved you enough to hold it up. Tell your neighbor, he loved me enough to tell me no. Yeah. Well, what's next? God never starts a process without having an end and a beginning in mind. He never engages in a process without having purpose already worked out. Every decision and every choice, bad or good, when surrendered to God, can be used for our purpose and for his glory. Woo, for the God of all grace. That ought to make somebody happy right there. The God of all grace. In other words, the God, the one who bestows favor, enabling ability, and empowering power. He himself purposes or decides or says, this is what I'm going to do because you did this. This is my response to what you done. Because you resisted and you stood, he says, I'm going to perfect you. The word perfect here in this text does not necessarily mean complete. In the text, in Greek, it means to mend or restore. So he says, what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to restore some things. Ooh, I'm about to get happy right there. Things you had to give up and things you lost along the way. God says, because you learned how to resist and stand, I'm going to restore. Somebody ought to get happy right there. Because you learned how to resist the forces of the enemy that were speaking to you to give up. But you stood, not always knowing what you were standing on. My return for you is that I'm going to restore. The next thing in the text here, he says that I will do is I will establish you. The Greek word for establish in this text means shore you up. In other words, I'm going to support you. Teach Bishop Porter. Ooh, areas you thought that you had no support in, I'm going to reassure you. What's next? Well, he's going to support me. You've been wondering, God, who's with me? I came to prophetically speak to somebody to tell you God's going to give you a new support base. Because what you've been depending upon didn't work for you this year. But because you resisted, oh yes, God help me, Lord, and because you decided to stand, I'm going to give you a brand new support base. The thing about God giving a support base, God makes it and he provides the things that we need based on where we're going. I don't know who you are in here tonight, but somebody needs to get ready for something bigger than you could ever dream for in your life. And so what you've suffered and what you've lasted through was creating a greater foundation for what God was going to build your life on. Oh, Lord, help me here. And so the next thing God says, I'm going to do myself. He said, I'm going to strengthen you. Well, the Greek rendering of the word strengthen means to reinforce. Ooh. In other words, I'm going to reaffirm who you are. I'm going to reinforce who you've been saying you were. I'm going to reinforce who they said you were not. I'm going to reinforce what they said you would never have. You ought to talk back to me in here. I'm going to reinforce what's been denied, and I'm going to reinforce what you thought would never happen here. And then fourthly, God says, I'm going to settle. Notice the text ends with the word you, which means God's going to restore you. God's going to support you. God's going to reinforce you. And finally, God's going to settle you. The word settle means stabilize. Oh, I don't know who I'm preaching to tonight, but somebody's life has been like a boat on an angry sea. You've been struggling to find a harbor to bring your boat into, and it just looks like I've been tossed from one thing to the next. Well, because you resisted and because you stood, I'm going to stabilize you. Ooh, when God stabilize you, you become like the psalmist said, I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree that's planted by the waters. In other words, something happens to your resolve when God stabilizes you. See, when God stabilizes you, it means you've lived through death, and you lived through little, and you lived through much, and you've lived through tears. Yeah, Paul said, I've learned how to be full when really I'm hungry. I've learned how to abound when I'm really abasing. I can do all things through Christ that strengthen me. Yeah! Paul said, I've become so stabilized that I let nothing separate me. That's what stabilization to do. It means you've lived through some rocky winds and some stormy seas. I've seen the lightning flashing, and I've heard the thunder rolling. I felt sin breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul. But I heard, oh Lord, the voice of Jesus say, fight on. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. I'm about to get out of your way, but the rest of that verse says, no, never alone. He stabilizes. Look at what God has promised to do. He's promised to restore. He's promised to support. He's promised to reinforce. And he's promised to stabilize. I'm going to my seat here, but I got happy the other day when I was doing my study, and I was saying, Lord, what are you saying this year? And then the Lord took me to the Jewish Hebrew calendar, and the saints of old have celebrated the new year as of September, though we are starting on the Gregorian calendar on tonight, but the Jews started in September, and they started their year 5775, 57, 75, 577 and a 5. And the Lord said to me as I started doing my research, said, you got to look at what I'm doing. I am not starting to do what I'm going to do in January. I've already started it in September, and I gave the church 577, 5. Well, I said, Lord, what are you saying? And as I began to look at what this Hebrew year means to them, it means 5 is the number of grace. It means grace going in and grace going out. I got 5 at the beginning and 5 at the end, and a double 5 means you got double grace. Yeah! In the middle is called the sandwich. It has 7. When I looked at it again, I said to myself, well, 7 means the number of maturity, but it also means the number of confirmation. There are 7 divisions in the Bible and 49 books that were originally given, divided by 7, which simply means that the whole counsel of God is perfect by itself. But double 7 not only means, my God, it not only means maturity and completion, but 2 7s means acceleration. That means God is going to accelerate what he's already said in his word. I wish I had strength to preach tonight, but every prophecy that you put on the shelf, he's going to accelerate it. Every promise you hung on the door, he's going to accelerate it. Yeah! 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 He is. Thank you, baby, for praying. I said he is the God of grace. Let me talk right there. What that really means, that grace, which means the God of, which means the bestower of favor. The God of grace simply means that it belongs to him, and he gives it to whom he chooses. It's his. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You can't elect it. It's the God of grace who bestows it to whom he chooses. Well, I just came on this night out of my bed to tell somebody that 2015 is the year to become what he promised you. It's the year that grace is going to box you in. Acceleration is going to get you there. What you've been praying for. This is the year to become healed, to become delivered, to become set free. Yes, if you've been dreaming about doing it, this is the year to get it done. Tell your neighbor, this is the year to get it done. To become what you've been praying for. To become what you've been desiring. To become what you've been wishing for. Because grace is going to back you up. And grace is going to lead the way. You got goodness in one place. You got mercy in the other place. In the middle, you got perfect acceleration. You ought to tell your neighbor, it's my time. It's my time. Yeah. It's your time. It's your time. It's your time. I prophetically speak to you tonight to tell you tonight, relationships you've been trying to make work in this season, God is going to do it. He's going to unravel it. He's going to do it. Grace is going to open the door. And grace is going to shut the door. And grace is going to make the way. And grace. Touch three people to tell them this is my year to become. This is my year to become. This is your year to become. You ought to lay your hands on yourself and say, this is my year to become. You've been down long enough. You've been crying long enough. You spent this year crying. But in 2015, he's going to turn your tears into joy. It's your time to eat the good of the land. It's your time to walk in your season. You bore your burdens long enough. You ought to say, it's my time. Finally, yeah. Finally, God is going to get glory out of where you've been. God is going to get glory out of where you're going. Every fire furnace, he's going to get glory. Every fallen moment, he's going to get glory. Every accident, accident. He's gonna get glory. I wish I had a witness in this room. God is gonna make it work out for you. For the Bible said in verse 11, to him be glory and dominion forever. I came to tell you, God is not just going to get glory out of the good, but when I surrender my bad to God, God will turn it around and take a mess and make a message and take a test and make a testimony. Yeah, 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 yeah. He's able to do what no other power is able to do. Have you any rivers that you cannot cross over? Have you any mountains that you cannot tunnel through? God specializes in things that seem impossible. He's able. I said he's able. Yeah, he's able to do what no other power is able to do. He's a doctor in the sick room. He's a lawyer in the courtroom. He's bread when you're hungry. He's water when you're thirsty. He's a friend to the friendless. He's able. I'm going to my seat. Now unto him who's able to do exceedingly and abundantly. He's able to do it. He's able to do it. Somebody say yeah. Lift your hand and say yeah. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Won't he, won't he, won't he, won't he, won't he, won't he, won't he? Yes, he will.